Hello, 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 and welcome to Emerald Thoth with me, Mark. Hope you're doing well today. Hope everything is well where you are. And if it doesn't feel like it, then it always is. Everything's always working out. In many, many lifetimes. So, this second and these moments aren't everything in the tapestry. Okay, I'm back to give you another message today, 2 days in a row. The message I've received in meditating on the energy just before coming on here is shadow work. I'm kind of getting that feeling today of you might be working through some of the more difficult things. Notice the blinds kind of here. There's light coming in. There's always light, but there's also the top are just shut a bit. And it's that balance of the light coming through and maybe just holding on to bits, maybe bits that are transforming within you. And sometimes we need to recognise that shadow work and those things coming up that may have been coming up for years, decades even. But we start to know and learn as we go along the journey that they were always there to help us. The suffering was always there to help us understand the contrast between the light and the dark. And as we become more conscious beings, we start to realise that everything that we went through had a purpose, even though we couldn't quite understand it at the time. So I'm going to start this reading with the Urban Crow Oracle to take messages regarding this kind of shadow work and what's coming up today, what's looking to be acknowledged and recognised and transmuted for you. Okay, I'll start with 2 cards. At the bottom of the deck is number 2, Anomaly. Interestingly, very much prominent on here is the white crow. Very rare being. It stands out on here. It's interesting that it's the number 2 in a field full of dandelions. So you're transforming, you're turning that kind of dark into light. It talks about spirituality, it talks about unique capabilities, being an anomaly, which we all are in some way, but and this also talks to the spiritual advancement there as well, and kind of making these wishes and looking to make these dreams come true and really standing out from the crowd. And this is leading you forth, so I think Spirit's asking you to be a bit more curious, curiosity. And maybe it's time to open certain doors you were afraid to not open before, or walk through certain doors that you may have done before but you haven't walked into in a while. And so that curiosity can take you places where you can learn new things. Again, standing out from the crowd, number 11 here, which 1 add 1 is 2. This curiosity is bringing you to community, to your community. Number 10 here, 10 representing changes and ends of cycles, and this gives me this sense that you've grown from the root and you're now coming out, you're stepping into new worlds, almost like this is stepping into a portal here, through curious endeavour, through your transformation, through standing out. New communities and sense of communities comes, and this can be online communities, this can be interest, hobbies that you find communities for, or it can be work communities as well. But it gives me a sense of new communities, and that comes from shadow work, that comes from spiritual transformation. And this is not the norm, this is anomalous. I knew I'd said that wrong. Anomalous. It's an anomaly. Anomalous would be the right way to say it. It's just something different, and it's leading you to groups that are different. You know, coming to this community has come from standing out individually and transforming and going through doorways that not everyone has ventured into, and standing out from the crowd. Okay. So we'll take some tarot cards with that from the Astro Matrix. Let's see what Spirit wants to say. 2 more. Okay. So the first 2 cards that came up, we started with the 7 of Cups, which is Venus in Scorpio. It's called Debauch in the Thoth deck. In here, the traditional kind of Rider-Waite style represents choices, represents emotional pulls, represents illusions. Often with the back of a figure, a shadowy figure almost here, which could generally represent yourself, represents a being in the mortal 3D world. And making choices really of what you give your emotional energy to, especially the emotional energy, what you put your hopes and dreams to, and learning and discerning the things that aren't necessarily for you. The world will hand us all of these temptations. In fact, it will tell us in our mind that we want all of these things, and our soul does not always want all of those things. And even when we want those things, the form is often not as we think originally. Talking about those lessons at the start of this video, that when we rise in consciousness we see things differently, and why we are brought to certain places to go through certain things, and the spiritual path will often involve suffering, because that is one of the most prominent ways for a soul's evolution. And so here you're kind of learning and discerning that, and rising into this white light kind of being. And with that comes movement. So the balance of yin and yang, the balance of shadow and light, of masculine and feminine, the balancing of emotions, with this card being Cancer. Moving forward as well. Interestingly, my view of the Chariot kind of changes. It's always seen as movement. In modern decks, it's often shown as like a fast car with somebody next to it. But the Chariot is kind of that phase when you're about to move. The Chariot is often pictured in a town in the background, and then you're about to go forward. It is the cardinal water sign, so it is, an element of movement in there. And these horses are walking on water. Interestingly, coming from the 7 of Cups, you've kind of made the decisions, and you're now moving forward. You're taking those initial steps and moving through to what really fulfills you, really gives you a sense of an emotional home, which leads me on to the card that came after, which is the 10 of Cups. Mars, interestingly enough, for a very kind of satiated card, it's called Satiety in the Thoth deck, this sense of fulfillment with Mars in Pisces. There's a sense of finding what is home, that journey from the 7 of Cups. So the 7 of Cups goes from the 8 to the 9 to the 10. The 8 is realizing what you had before wasn't quite fulfilling you, and that can be those lessons, that can be that shadow work to go, this and this doesn't work for me, woe is me, I'm going to pack up and leave. And that's not always necessarily a physical thing. It can be an emotional detachment, and a mental detachment. Mental detachment is probably one of the strongest things, because we often stay in the mental realm, the mental arena. We are surrounded by people, which is the most of modern society. Most human beings are stuck mostly in the mental realm and egoic mind thinking. I've kind of changed my mind on, well, not changed my mind, maybe adapted it, maybe evolved my view of not seeing like ego as the enemy so much all the time, but looking at how we balance ego and the ego mind, because the ego mind talks about logic, it talks about the way we use facts, and I'd say discrimination rather than discernment, so how we separate things. And of course that separation is one of the greatest things that causes us suffering. We can choose not to be aware of it, and in the soul's evolution generally it's harder for us to have the capacity to be aware of that level of separateness. But the journey really of the spiritual seeker and the soul is to find oneness. So in here it's looking to find oneness with another, with communities. The Ten of Cups isn't just about romantic partnerships or even just creating your own family or even your families that you're currently in. It's talking about communities, and it could be workplaces, it can be social gatherings, friends, and it can be a romantic partner and your home. But it's what's in your heart, essentially. And that's kind of what we look to balance, is the heart, the mind, the body and the soul. That's the full ego. That's what an ego is. That's a whole balanced ego. It just happens to be the case in modern society that we focus a lot of the attention of ego onto the mind part, and that's where the imbalance lies. The swords are one of the trickiest of the suits, which represent the intellect and the mind and the logical mind. And it's often where the most suffering occurs. So this journey here is from the heart, which is you balancing out away from so much of the logic, so much of the crowd, so much of the collective ego mindset. Seven of Cups, to the Chariot, to making movements, to the Ten of Cups. And here is probably what represents the journey, is the Knight of Cups. This could represent somebody else, could represent a partnership coming in, but I feel in this case it represents you. It represents you offering yourself the cup, or you going forward with your cup that you know is full, that you've made decisions on from the Seven of Cups, and you're moving forward here. Interestingly, this is a white horse, which gives a sense you're moving in a sense of light, balancing out the shadow. But let's say it's more integrated, because that's the healthier way, is to have the shadow and the light integrated. And you're moving towards what brings you fulfillment, what brings you a sense of home. But you have to embody that first for it to really pan out with the next moves that you're going to make in the 3D realm. And that really seems to be what's happening. It's one of the slower ones, apart from the Knight of Pentacles. But it moves with heart, the Knight of Cups. Now, a Knight of Cups can come in imbalanced and overly romantic and unsure of their own heart and their own vices and their own over-romanticism. Or they can come in with genuine, heartfelt love and knowing themselves and how they can operate on a heart-based way in the modern world, how they can operate a more wholesome ego that involves more heart than average, as opposed to an excess of ego mind. Let's take a card or two from Secrets of the Ancestors, and then I'll take a card or two from the Time Traveler's Oracle to reinforce the message. Okay. It's very watery. So the bottom of the deck is the Martyr, is the hanged man, or the hanged woman, the hanged person, sacrifice and self-reflection. I think this is what you are moving away from, and just underneath that is the enigma, the unknown. This is kind of a wild card in the deck. You've kind of been in that suspended state of trusting your guides, because there's number 44 on this card. And trying to understand yourself and your wants and your needs, trying to seek a sense of enlightenment. So after that comes Father of Water, which is number 31 on here, balance and harmony. And you're looking to move again with this sense of balance and harmony and stability. It can represent again a figure in your life, whether it's a masculine figure, it generally would be because of the king. And that doesn't necessarily have to be a man, somebody who embodies that care and sensitivity and flow, and who can give you that kind of emotional stability, which can also again represent yourself. We can't just see the court cards as somebody else, they can represent us and parts that we need to embody of ourselves. And you also have the Root of Water, which is highly sensitive. And again, it gives messages from the divine that are coming to you, new ideas in love and how you operate in the world from your heart space. You know, in this read of, I would call these ancestors' oracles equivalent to tarot cards. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cups cards, 3 of which are court cards, just missing the Queen. And then you have the 7 and the 10 of cups, and it's the 7 to the 10 of cups really in the way this read has gone. And you have the card which is ruled by Cancer, represented by Cancer, which is the Chariot. Also number 7 on here as well, bringing heaven into earth, moving forward, luck, and going towards victory and triumph. Heading towards victory and triumph. Okay, 15:55 on the timer. Change. Heading towards victory and triumph through change. As I say that, the card that comes out is transformation, and then growth, and then at the bottom of the deck is transcending. So, and this is Atlantis in here. Again, water. You are transforming from a heart space. You are transforming from an ancient soul space. So that shadow work you are doing is from lifetimes and lifetimes of spiritual soul transformation, evolution, and growth. I just recognise as I say those words, transformation and growth are here, and I'll get to them in a second. Just below that is 9, creativity, so it could be through creative art. This could be how you're grounding it into the world. Number 9 talks about charity and service, so this is how you are individually showing that heart space through creativity. You could be a writer, a poet, a musician, a painter, or you could just be creative in the way you live and that you operate in the world, and you're just embodying that more. And some of this work, some of this shadow work, and some of this curiosity that you have in your soul, and maybe some of the hesitance that you've had before, and some of these spiritual communities that you may find, and these soul connections that you may find, comes from knowing more and more consciously about your past, remembering more and more of who you are from a soul space, from a heart space, and not so much from an ego mind space, and trying to embody that and feel those parts in your body, because the body is reacting to all of those areas. And then that comes into your movements. You'll notice in here there's dolphins here and there's dolphins in the sky, and transcending talks about you're transcending your view of reality, and as you transcend your view and embody that transcended view of reality, this transcended view of reality, to keep saying it, is becoming reality. Because obviously by the normal 3D concepts of the way the world is viewed, and again very much heavily in a ego mind based, with less of a heart ego and less of a soul ego, this is fairy tale. But within your soul you may recognize that there have been times that have been more ascended, there have been higher consciousness, and that is part of the reason for the dissonance within your heart and the suffering that you may go through, because you know deep in your soul there have been, as such, better times. Atlantis is often in spiritual circles called a golden age. It's just a view of what we see as possible. Things like crystal temples. This is a merlinite. This is a shaman quartz and a phantom quartz and some celestite. This is like communication with angels, higher beings, and these kind of represent doing the shadow work, the depth, the duality, the understanding with the earth and higher realms, underworld realms, and this shows growth inside. Shows a crystal within a crystal. And of course Atlantis is famous for crystal temples. So there is some real work being done, which is growth. And here to represent that kind of sense of shadow work is the black panther, the black puma, or the black leopard. That very much seems kind of that panther energy, that shadow work energy. But there's growth in that. This is growth, and then it gives a sense of isolation. It gives a sense of being in your own forest and jungle, to understand that transcendent soul that you are. Water, again, streaming, but rich abundance and green earth. So you're bringing that sense, you're bringing that heart sense to the world. And again, green, the heart chakra. It's understanding the depths of your own soul, your own emotions, and your own being, to bring back almost a way where humans are, were, and will be of a higher consciousness. And that's often the route through to the soul psychology. We can often kind of understand is coming through the emotions, through the heart state, from the mind, all encapsulated by the body, but to the soul, psyche, the goddess of the soul. And that's where the word psychology really comes from. Freud said, the poets and the philosophers before me understood the soul, I just turned it into a science. And that is where the psyche and psychology has been in human history, and within you and within all human beings through ages and ages. And you're in this transformative state. The moon is quite prevalent in here as well. You know, there's a big bubble here, but you could look at that as like the moon. This for sure must be the moon if it's related to Cancer, ruled by the moon. And just the sense overall of the moon guiding, I think in here there's a moon as well. So being guided by your inner light, being guided through that shadow work, being guided in the dark by the moon, which is the light that we see at night time. And here with Rumi of Persia and transformation, you're transforming through the dark, through ecstasy, through spiritual change and transformation and standing out, and your connection with the divine, with God, Source, Yahweh, Allah, the divine creator. The name not so important, but the connection much more so. The substance of you and your connection to the divine is what transforms yourself, is what transforms your suffering, is what transforms the world. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this work. And if you ever think you're alone in doing it, boy, woman, person, you are not. And you haven't been for lifetimes, but it feels that way. So get curious and find those groups slowly but surely and steadily, and don't beat yourself up. Growth is not a linear process as well, by the way. We can grow exponentially in months, and 1 day and 2 days and 3 days we go back, and 1 week we can fall back. But it's the persistence, it's the strength to try, really, is what makes the difference. It's the not yet mindset, another thing I looked at today, which comes in beautifully to this read. You might not be there yet. You might not have passed the exam. You might not be where you think you're meant to be. And even interestingly, it flips the concept of now and presence, because now and presence is important. But if you stay in the now purely, you might not see that there's more to come, and that what has been was always there to help lead the way. Time is not so linear, and nor is growth. And so it's the persistence to keep moving forward in that balanced fashion, with the shadow and the light, the yin and the yang, with the dark and the bright, all the same, to show the way, to show light in the dark. And this world needs it. This world needs not the people who are on stage currently and showing as a material version and using words without much substance. The world needs those who are curious about the heart and the soul and transcending the normal egoic mindset view. It needs the people with that wholesome, that balanced ego, not just from the mind, but through the body, through the heart, through the soul. And if you're listening to this, then you're doing that. And in those days where it feels like nothing has happened and not yet seems never, it's just not yet. And you will get there. And I love you. And I'm proud of you. And I feel that beauty in your energy. And others may struggle to see it, and it's not a judgment on them, because their souls may have not been through the same life cycles and not met themselves at the same place that you have. But it's all the same either way, because everyone has their path, and yours is a beautiful one. Through the suffering, through the struggle, through the shadow work, to find who you are deeply, and not just what the world may tell you, and not just what the people on the surface are saying, but really deep, deep down in a transformative sense throughout the ages. Okay, all the best. Namaste.